Hello, this is Ella.
And I'm Ravi, and we just released Chapter 2 of our video game, Friendly Facade.
Chapter 2!
Yeah, of our visual novel, a couple weeks ago now. And we thought we'd just give a little update. And I always think it's interesting to talk about like the development behind things we chose or how it ended up in the state it's in and stuff like that.
True, because this chapter in particular is very different from how we pictured it.
Yeah. I have like this big document of everything that happens in the game. So in earlier drafts, things aren't as like fleshed out. So yeah, things did change a little bit. Not like plot wise, because we're not changing the plot. It's pretty set in stone, but like gameplay wise. So when we got to chapter 2 and we were thinking about it more, we kind of we tried to emphasize chapter 2 more so around the different paths and choices. We really wanted to make sure that there were choices that you could make that actually like made tangible impacts on things happening in the story. So that was kind of like the thesis, or like what we were really going for with chapter 2. So that obviously, if you've played it, comes through in the form of the pushing and the different outcomes that can happen during the group activity. So yeah, that's one of the main things, because in earlier drafts there were no pushing options at all. It was just like you pretty typically just solve the puzzle, and that's about it. So the 5 outcomes that you can get are: you finish it normally, in which Maggie has a discussion with Blake where she gets the upper hand on him, actually, which is very interesting because we thought that, this is actually, I didn't write this down, but this is actually something interesting. What's interesting is that originally during our test playing phase even, when you push someone in, you get extra scenes based on like you pushing them in, because that's like a very important moment, obviously. But if you finished it normally, if you fixed the machine and everything was good, then you'd actually get less content because you didn't like do anything a little bit mischievous.
Yeah, and during the test play, that was like not a complaint, but that was something I addressed, and I was like, we talked about it with one of the people, and they said that if someone goes back and tries to win, it needs to be like more extravagant, so it feels like it was warranted to have the win and go back and do the win.
Yeah, so that's why we added the scene where if you do successfully fix the machine, Maggie like kind of gets the upper hand on Blake, or at least you think for a moment, because we wanted it to feel earned, because you did it.
Yeah, that was another thing too. Amina, my sister, she was like, I want to tell everyone that Blake told me to push someone in. And we were like, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. That
makes sense.
Yeah.
So then the other 3 more of the outcomes are pushing each of the options, which are Puck, Blake, and Zoya. And different people will see you do it and have different opinions of you, and they all play out a little bit differently, which I think is interesting. And they're all very in character, and it was fun to write. And then the last option is if you take too long to fix the machine, and Blake's like, if you don't do it, I will. And then he pushes Calvin in and frames it on you and makes it seem like you told him to push it in. And it is crazy. It's crazy. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend looking at it, because the way it happens is very interesting.
It's set up really good too, I think, because we have it so you can check on him when he falls, Blake, and you can see there's an inhaler in his hand. So it kind of seems like there's no purpose to it, but if you get the lose ending, you get to see the purpose of why it was shown.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the different options were. And then there were, even through outside of the group activity, we made sure that there was like dialogue changes here and there that would re-emphasize the choice you made and made it more impactful, which we felt was important. Because that was one of the things I felt was lacking in chapter 1, is that it was very linear. So we wanted to have chapter 2 deviate based on character decisions, because that's kind of important for the story going forward. Not that this particular choice is the most important thing in the world, but the concept of making choices is important to the themes of the game.
And that's like my favorite thing in video games, is different choices.
Yeah, so we wanted to establish that here. So Group Activity 2, going further with the idea that Chapter 2 seeks to iterate or fix some of the flaws that I personally saw in Chapter 1, is that I wanted to make Chapter 2 more the minigame to be more like in-depth, which is, I think, is very clear to see. Chapter 1, you're just like clicking on things, which is fine, but I wanted to make chapter 2 like an actual like game type thing. So that's the reason that I made it like a turn-based thing, and I came up with this system. It might be a little bit too much, but that's what we worked it out with balancing.
It was very ambitious.
It was a bit too ambitious. No, it was good. So with the balancing of chapter 2, we had to test play it a lot to find like a sweet spot that we wanted to hit. At first, people were really confused on like just how to even interact with the game in general, and I had to add in lots of tutorial texts and stuff.
Yeah, which is never on the person playtesting. It's always on us. It's just
Yes.
good to get like the different perspectives of who gets it, who doesn't get it.
It's never the player's fault. You have to make it so that if they don't understand something, that's your fault, not theirs. So we had to add, I had to add a lot of things. And then even after there was like tutorials that told you like, that made it very clear how to interact with the game and like how to mechanically do everything, people were still confused because they felt like it lacked, or this is what I got out of it, is I felt that it lacked like direction, or people didn't know like what to do first or how to strategize or anything, or like if the amount of people they chose to run was like good or not. And I eventually was just laying in bed and I came up with a solution, and that was to add the percentage, the success percentage, which was not there at first. So it was just, to me, it seemed simple and intuitive because I made the game, but I realized to players is that it was kind of like a crapshoot if the lights would stay on or not. So I was like, I took a page out of Fire Emblem's playbook and I wanted to make it very clear what the outcome would be. Even if it's not like 100%, like it tells you like what the chances are. It makes it very clear, because I feel like communicating that to the player was very important, because that was not communicated very well.
I think that was really helpful too, because it seemed like a lot of people got it afterwards.
No, yeah, and then immediately after that change, we had no problems, really. No major problems with people struggling with the group activity as much. So what we can talk about more, that's probably the end of us talking about like the game mechanics, and now we can talk about more about the story. So I think one of the major pieces of it is Patrick's backstory that we went into. Yep. This is going to be our first of many like examples of really like delving into a character's backstory and like really expanding on them in a major way. And I was excited for that. Because in chapter 1 we had the Blake moment, but you don't really know much about Blake, and that's by design. But I wanted to show players that we are willing to let you really know about a character deeply, and so Patrick was very easy for that, and it made sense pacing wise.
Yeah, because I feel like when we made the original story, we were very afraid to like show everyone like characters like backstory and background and everything. So we kind of like kept it to ourselves for like a really long time. Because like we know everything about the characters, but like the players don't know everything about the characters.
Mm-hmm. I feel like even in chapter 1, I was a bit hesitant to share too many details because I was like, oh, we're going to run out of stuff to talk about later. But I feel like I really refined the pacing and tried to figure out where everything goes in the story and really nailed it down even more than it was before, so that's good. So just know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Every other character is just as much or like even more so thought out than Patrick is, and some of the characters' backstories and motivations and things that happen, I'm really excited to show you, and I just know that this is just the beginning. So another story thing that I want to talk about is about Rain's weakness file, and in the original like incarnation of just like the bullet points of the story, there was never a point where we were going to reveal anyone's weakness file. But we decided that, what I decided is that we needed higher stakes for the story and for the player and for Maggie. And so I decided that revealing the person who loses weakness file would be like the perfect thing to add more stakes to the story, because it gives more reason for Maggie to try her best not to lose. So when Rain's file is read out, it's supposed to show you that like, if this is how bad Rain's is, it makes you worry about like what Maggie's could be. Like it had to be bad, so that like you know that like there's they don't want this stuff getting out.
It gives the player an incentive to really try hard on the group activities, like Maggie is feeling.
Yes, going forward as well. And then another thing that was kind of rewritten. So during the town hall, there's this part where you talk with Amelia, Alex, and Matt about like the points and what the points were between day 1 and day 2, and you're trying to figure out who stole the weakness files. And I wrote this whole long discussion between all of them where they get really into it, and it's like you're like subtracting day 2's points from day 1's points, and you're like trying to they're making so many assumptions. They're like 3 levels deep in assumptions. They're like, if it's based on this, and then if we can extrapolate from that and go on top of that with this other assumption, and it's just really crazy.
I test read it too, and I was like, what is happening?
And I was like, this is just really confusing, and it doesn't add anything. And then I realized that I should just focus on what matters, and that's just like honing in on the points end in a 5. That's it.
But that doesn't mean you guys can't go back and do the same thing that they were going to do and make assumptions.
Yeah, you could look really deep into the points if you wanted to. I opted not to put that in the main story because it would have been really confusing and hard to sit through, in my opinion. So I rewrote that. Yeah, but on top of the Patrick thing, I'm really excited to see other character moments. And just because Patrick was the main thing doesn't mean that other stuff didn't happen throughout. There's also very interesting character moments that I was glad to see, like with Tegan and Puck, and even stuff with William and Mackenzie. And I think it's very interesting to see those arcs set up. And I think
laying down the groundwork of it.
Laying down the groundwork a bit, yes. And trying to just seeing where that's going. So just keep an eye on that, I suppose, if you were listening this much into the video that you care.
So for chapter 2, I feel like I did a lot of CGs, and I have like a very new shading style that I'm going for. I've been watching a lot of tutorials, but now like I kind of have like a better understanding of shading and how it works. Because I always like try to incorporate like as best as I can like little Easter eggs in like CGs and things like that to the best of my ability. Kind of like when you're making a movie and like the way that you're like filming it, like the camera work like means a lot of stuff, so I try to do that in the pictures, and I'm kind of becoming more conscious about it now, and like I'm thinking a lot more and diving deep into things and making sure that like I know what I'm doing to the best of my ability.
You worried a lot more about like framing and stuff.
Yeah, chapter 3, hopefully you're gonna see that a lot more too, because I was going kind of crazy. I was going kind of hard on a few of the drawings, so I'm excited to show some people chapter 3 art. And I'm gonna start fixing up the sprites and stuff and reshading them a little bit. I'm not gonna completely redo them because I like the sprites, but I am gonna go and like reshade them, and so you're gonna have like a new feel hopefully soon with all the new sprites.
So you're starting to talk about chapter 3, right?
Yeah.
Which it is in development right now. We've been working on it for a little bit. Obviously, we started development before chapter 2 came out, so we're pretty far into working on chapter 3 right now.
Mm-hmm. You have pretty much over 50% of the writing done for it, and I've been working on the next group activity stuff and the new CGs and junk.
Yeah, I would say we're definitely at least nearing the midpoint of development.
Yeah, I need to make more music for it, but we have a few music stuff already raring to go. There's a lot to do.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely excited for chapter 3. And I hope you guys are ready for chapter 3 too. We really appreciate you, especially if you watch this far and you care enough to hear us talk about little details like this. I hope it was entertaining or insightful in some way.
Also, if you haven't joined our Discord, join our Discord. I'm gonna do like polls and stuff soon. I think that's gonna be kind of fun.
Yeah. I'm very curious on what endings everyone got, if they're willing to share. So yes, thank you for supporting Friendly Facade. We really appreciate it.
Bye.
Goodbye.